Now to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the southern mining town of Kolwezi sits on huge reserves of cobalt, a crucial metal for making rechargeable batteries that power electric vehicles, the mobile phones that we use, and also laptops. But as the world is moving away from fossil fuels, there's concern that the growing demand for cobalt is affecting people at its main source. Now, in a recent report, Amnesty International details alleged forced evictions and human rights abuses targeting communities in the DRC as mining companies expand their operations. Now, in a moment, I'll be speaking to Kandi Ofime, Amnesty's researcher. But first, here are some of her findings.
Brick by brick, Aimon Mousson has been demolishing his own home. He moved in here nearly 30 years ago. Now he's having to rebuild out on the edge of town after being forcibly evicted by the operator of the vast open-cast mine at the end of his street. Our expectation was that we'd receive compensation, because the law says if you relocate someone, the person should live in a better place than where they were. But unfortunately, it's practically the opposite. Kolwezi is a community that's living on the edge, and the edge keeps coming closer as the cobalt mine consumes everything in its path. In some cases, entire neighbourhoods have literally been wiped off the map. Cobalt is a rare resource that exists only in a few places on the planet. Half of all known global reserves are under the busy streets and farmlands of Kolwezi. From mobile phones to electric cars, cobalt is everywhere, making DRC's reserves sought after. And outside interests and the pursuit of profit mean one thing: human suffering. Amnesty had harrowing testimony. Kanini Masaka used to live in the nearby village of Mukumbi. She says her family and most of their community were brutally evicted from their homes by the Congolese Republican Guard.
We wondered if it was war or something. From that moment, you know, soldiers with guns and us, villagers in the fields. We were so afraid as they burned down the houses.
And it gets worse. Amnesty spoke to Kabibi, who wants to remain anonymous. She says she was brutally gang-raped by 3 soldiers after she tried to get to her fields, blocked off by military forces patrolling the nearby mine.
I fell ill, very ill. My entire body was in pain and my head really hurt. I've never experienced anything like that. Such things have never happened. They are not paying us our money. They need to pay our money so we can bring our children back to school.
Forecasts say that the global demand for cobalt could increase 6-fold by 2040. DRC's rare resources may be able to save the world from climate catastrophe, but for the people of Kolwezi, cobalt looks like a curse, not a blessing.
For more on this, let's bring in Kandi Ofime from Amnesty International. She's lead researcher into these particular findings. Hello, Kandi. Now, the pursuit of these raw materials is creating a horrible situation for locals. Tell us more about the major findings from your report.
So, hi, Eddie. Thank you for having me. We have interviewed about 130 people who have been forcibly evicted from their homes and farmland to make way for large industrial mining projects that extract cobalt and copper. And what's very clear to us is that there's a gap in state action to make sure that the rights of residents of Kolwezi, which is known as the World Cobalt Capital, are protected, and the interest of frontline communities is kept at the center of the Congolese government policies in the mining sector, and that the companies who we've been in touch with really have theory and practice when it comes to management of this project that really doesn't line up.
I mean, you had your sample size, but give us a sense of how widespread this problem is.
I mean, this is we describe it in the report as a systemic issue because thousands and thousands of people are concerned. Many of the concessions that we visited are home to, 40,000 plus people. Kolwezi itself is a city that is 500,000 people, and the issue really spreads across the Lualaba province, the Haut-Katanga, and is something that affects people who live all across the Copper Belt, which is a region that stretches all the way from southern DRC to northern Zambia.
I mean, we understand some people are being kicked out of their homes. I mean, according to your report, people are being kicked out of their homes without compensation. So my question is, where do they live and how are they surviving?
Well, I think what's striking is that many have sought out support from provincial government authorities, national government authorities. They share their grievances with the companies and really haven't been heard. I have in mind, in particular, the case of Shemaf and the informal settlement of Mukumbi. Shemaf is a company that's 100% owned by an entity based in the UAE. And what people told us is that in November 2016, the village was raided by the Congolese military, the Republican Guard, which is a particular unit of the military in charge of protecting the president. And that informal settlement that grew over the years and was home to about, between 1,500 and 3,000 people, overnight was burned down. I met with a child who was 2.5 years old when the incident happened, who has scars from, neck to ankle. They were kicked out of their homes sort of without any due process, with extreme violence. It took years and many months of advocacy for the community to get any sort of attention from the authorities. The company accepted to pay a settlement in 2019, which was $1.5 million. But if you subdivide it by the number of residents, that means that I've met people who've received as little as $200, $300 for the loss of their home and their entire community overnight.
Right, very tragic situation there. But as the world makes its energy transition, demand for cobalt is only going to increase. Again, that was in your report. How do you see the situation evolve in the next few years?
Well, I think it's evident that the world really urgently needs to move away from fossil fuel dependency. And as states decarbonize the global economy, the demand for these strategic minerals is only going to increase. And that increase has already had very serious repercussions on the ground. So, we're just trying to raise a red flag because it's for sure, not just in the DRC, but many other places in the world where you find some of these minerals, whether it's cobalt, copper, lithium, and others, people live near or on the resources that are so essential and critical to the world's energy transition. So I think, there's going to be an acceleration for the demand of these minerals, and both, consumers, industrials, and, states should really be mindful of human rights abuses that can happen at the point of extraction and take that into account when they think about their supply chains. Right.
Kandi Ofime, researcher with Amnesty International. Thank you very much for your insights.
So much.